Good evening. Welcome to Earth to the Other Side. I'm John, your host, and tonight I have the pleasure of speaking with Kristen Warner, who's actually coming back to the channel. She's been on the channel before when we discussed her NDE, which took place in 2002. But tonight we're going to talk about her STE, her spiritually transformative experience. And Kristen, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. It's great to be back.
So how have you been and what's new with you? Is this something that happened since your NDE or did this happen prior to your NDE?
It happened quite a ways prior to my near-death experience. I was in my 20s when I had the near-death experience. This happened when I was 18.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah.
I had a very difficult childhood as far as fitting in and feeling comfortable with myself. I do have a physical disability. I was born with cerebral palsy. So I felt like I kind of stood out like a sore thumb, and I'm a very emotional person. When you're a teenager, obviously that makes life a little bit more difficult. Um, my home life wasn't the easiest. My family is fractured. We kind of had a difficult situation at home. And I absorbed, unfortunately, a lot of what was going on. So I was dealing with a lot of typical teenage angst, and depression, things like that. Um, and what happened to me, I didn't understand for the longest time really the whole message behind it, and I understand it now. I understand it relates to things that are on in the world today. But to start off, I just want to kind of share what happened. Um, in my near death experience with interview with you, I shared that I had um contemplated suicide several times, that I had attempted suicide. Um, when I was 18, that was the thick of that particular part of my life where I had those feelings, and I was seriously considering attempting suicide at this particular point in time. My parents were in the middle of getting ready to divorce, and I was living at home, and it just was a very tough time. So, um, trying to deal with all of it, I didn't handle it very well. And I had the date and the time picked out that I was planning to attempt to take my own life. Um, a neighbor of mine who did not know me at all. We had never really spent any time together. We had never spoken. He knocked on the door one day and he asked me if I wanted to go on a retreat. And I told him, no, I really don't feel like that's the right thing for me to do at this point. He didn't know that I was having the problems I was having. Um, he was persistent. He kept coming back. And finally, I was like, well, maybe I'll go. It'll give me a chance to get away from what's going on at home. I could get away from people that I knew and, just trying to get my head straight and figure out what I was going to do. And I went with that agenda. I didn't really go with the mindset to participate. And the retreat was actually in the mountains. It was secluded and away from the world, and there was a group of maybe 20, 25 kids. And, even though I was having these problems, I had a very spiritual relationship with Source. Um, It wasn't something that I denied. I was just kind of in a desperate state of mind at the time. And we got to the retreat, and I'm the kind of person that I'm very gregarious. I'm the kind of person that will make friends easily. I usually participate in things very quickly, but I separated myself, and he could tell. My neighbor could tell. And he looked at me and he said, "You don't have to participate. You don't have to say anything. Just be here." So I didn't really for the first day, and then he did all kinds of things, icebreakers and things like that, and I literally did not participate in any of those things. Um, in fact, I kept thinking, "Why am I here? What am I doing?" And we went to bed, and the next night, after a day of doing things out in the wilderness and just enjoying the mountains and talking about spirituality, they took us into a little chapel, and it was dark. They had a floor-length cross on the floor, and they filed us in and told us not to make a sound, just to sit down behind the crossbeam of the cross. And we did, and the chapel was dark. There was no lights, there were no candles lit. Um, there was a tiny little light up at the front, and we could see 2 chairs up at the front of the chapel. There were 2 people sitting in the chairs. And we're sitting here going, "What are we doing? What is this about?" And all of a sudden, we hear this voice coming out of nowhere, and they start doing the typical scenario about when you're on an airplane, how your seatbelt works, what to do in case of an emergency, and all that. So we realized then we were in the middle of a skit. So they proceeded to say that we were going to take off. And a few seconds later, we heard this big crash, and it made us all jump. It was huge. And it was chaos. We were like, as you can imagine, we were all kind of freaking out. We're like, "What in the heck is that?" And this voice comes over us and says, "You have just been in a plane crash. There are no survivors. Where are you going?" And it took my breath away. Because as I just said, my mindset was that I didn't want to be here anymore. Um, I literally felt shook, and we got up. We didn't say another word. Some of us were in tears, myself included. And we went to the cabin, and I was in a cabin by myself. And that whole night I spent praying and crying because it really shook me. I realized because of what I had been taught that if I did what I was planning to do, I was not going to be going to the best place. So, um, the next morning was the last morning of the retreat. We went back in the chapel, and I had another friend that I had met that was actually part of the team for this retreat. And he got up and gave a talk. I can't remember to this day what the actual talk was about, but we were sitting on the floor and he was discussing whatever his talk was about. And I was half connected, half not. But I looked up at him, and I swear to you, his face totally changed. I was not looking at my friend anymore. I realized that I was looking at the face of Christ. And what came out of his mouth was, you need to stay here. You have something you need to do. Uh, I again started to cry because I knew that wasn't my friend that I had just witnessed. He finished his talk and he came up to me after and he said to me, said, "You are glowing." He said, what has happened? Something happened. And I told him, and he said to me, "Kristen, I didn't say those words. Those words didn't come from me." Um, and right after that, I was invited to get involved with ministry. That's how my ministry started. I don't know if you remember, but when we spoke last time, I explained that I'm a non-denominational chaplain. That's where that road began. Um, but the reason why I wanted to share that with you tonight is I now know what it was that I was supposed to be doing, why I've been let to stay. Um, my whole life I've dealt with nothing but dealing with um trying to find peace, trying to find joy, trying to deal with life and adversity. My life has been a lot of struggle. And um, I realized after praying about sharing this experience with you that that is the reason why I'm here. And um, today's world is full of so much of darkness versus light. There's so much of that going on. And I was led to share that we all have a choice to make, and this is the time we need to make it. Um, we have to make a conscious decision to focus on which side we're going to choose to be on. And it has to be something that we focus on with every aspect of our lives. Every aspect that we do needs to be done with the decision, I'm going to do this in such a way that I bring light to the world or embrace the dark side of the world. Um, it's very, very strong in me that is the time that we're in right now. And I felt like it was something that was very important to put out there for people to think about. And it even goes down to deciding what you're going to wear for the day. Um, we are energy and we work off energy and we absorb spiritual energy too. And when the way that we interact with the energy that we're surrounding ourselves with. And a lot of times we do it without consciously thinking about it. Um, who are we speaking with during the day? Who are we interacting with during the day? And how do we deal with the way that feelings come up? Um, those are all conscious decisions that we have to make. We need to get to the point where we're not just going through the motions. And I see a lot of people are kind of going in that direction, but I'm being led to bring that to people's attention so that they have it in their minds when they go through their day.
Yeah, that's a good message.
Thank you.
So take me back. Thank you. Thanks for sharing the part where when you heard that voice.
Yes,
So how many were you in total when that voice came over you?
there was at least 20 other people in the room, and no one but me heard it.
So you were the only one that heard it.
Yes.
Hmm. Wow.
Um, and it was very profound. It changed my decision right then and there. I decided that that wasn't the road that I wanted to go down. But I have constantly asked question, why did that happen to me? Why was I chosen for something like that? Um, was it because I had made so many mistakes that um, the spirit world reached out to me and kind of shook me back into reality and made me realize, hey, you're going to make a really bad decision. Um, you know, why was I chosen to see Christ? I don't know. I didn't know at that time. Now I really think it was because um, I know what it feels like to be in a place where you feel on shaky ground. A lot of people in the world right now feel that and they don't know how to react. They don't know what to do. They don't know how tomorrow is going to be. But I can tell you with what I've experienced, um, if we reach out and we embrace the light, there's nothing to worry about. We're not going to go anywhere. I already know that we survive death. Um, this is right now, as a humankind, we're facing one of the biggest tests that we'll ever face. And it matters not just in day to day life, it matters in our spiritual lives too.
When you were looking at your friend and you saw the you realized that you were talking to Christ, I'm just curious, I mean that's profound in and of itself, but did your friend lose time or anything at that point? Did you guys discuss that afterward?
I did. I felt like I wasn't even connected to what was going on around me. I was totally distracted and focused on what was in front of me. He realized something had happened, but he didn't know what at all. He was kind of taken aback by it. He said that my countenance changed. He said that my demeanor changed, which I know it did because I was instantly in tears. But the one thing I want to say though is that it wasn't like I was being reprimanded. It was more, I want you here. You have something you need to accomplish, and I love you.
Yeah, that's
Um,
beautiful.
and again, we're taught that having those feelings and wanting to do what I was planning to do is one of the biggest mistakes that someone can make. But I've never been treated that way. I wasn't treated that way during my near death experience, and I wasn't treated that way with this experience either. Um, and unfortunately, I made the same mistake twice. So, and I can't even explain that. Why would that be the case? I know I was just struggling as a human being, but the reason why I think it's important for me to share this is not only was I reached out to once, but I was reached out to twice. And spirit and Christ, or whoever you embrace spiritually, it's out of love. It's all about love. And everything that we go through needs to lead us back to that.
Well, thank you so much again for sharing this experience. I really appreciate your time and appreciate you. Thank
You're
you so
welcome.
much.
Thank you for asking me back.
Anytime,
Great to
anytime.
talk.
Always nice to have you.